Hello everyone, this is Justin Smythe from nextbigtrade.com. This is a review of the best stage 2 breakouts for August 21st, 2026. We'll start off with the monster breakout of this past week, which was mRNA. Took the market completely by surprise on Wednesday, announced positive news for a cancer trial. Stock just completely exploded higher. Heaviest weekly volume by far in this stock in its entire history. And that includes even during COVID, this was a monster leader. They came out with a COVID vaccine, and this breakout completely dwarfs what happened during COVID in terms of the explosiveness behind it and the volume. The close on the week, in my view, is pretty solid. Didn't close at the highs of the week, but was up over 100% for the week and closed pretty close to the highs. A huge positive with this stock is it has no overhead resistance. We look at resistance for the past 2 years, and price is now above all previous overhead resistance, which creates blue sky potential, and this is a big base breakout as well. So really has all the attributes of a super powerful stage 2 breakout, and this is one of the biggest breakouts of the year, if not the biggest in the stock market. So massive move, and really what's to me is the most impressive about what happened here is this ignited breakouts in tons of other biotech stocks, including a stock like TEM, which was really doing nothing before mRNA broke out. And then all of a sudden TEM starts rocketing higher, and TEM's heavily shorted. So now the shorts are taken off guard by what's going on there all of a sudden. So that's really the sign of a monster, is it doesn't just break out itself. It creates an entire sector-wide move higher. And I think that's what I've heard some other traders talk about this stock this week, and they're completely failing to recognize that mRNA itself is not really the story here. It's the sector-wide breakout. It's the fact that mRNA caused a ton of other stocks to really follow through higher, and that's why this one's so powerful. And that's also what was lacking in things like AI data centers and computer hardware, where a stock like NBIS was breaking out, but it wasn't causing other stocks in its sector to move higher. That was a key sign that something was going on wrong there. And that's why NBIS broke down along with other stocks, related to computer hardware and AI data centers. So again, you got to pay attention to what's going on. You got to have no bias, and you got to put the clues together, and we've got a monster biotech breakout here, and biotech really is the top sector to trade right now because this is a more explosive breakout than even cryptocurrency. So on the daily chart, mRNA bust out to the upside on day one. Didn't really like the action too much on day two. You had high volume selling and a gap down. But then day three, it comes right back with big volume. I think this is super bullish to come right back with this huge volume. It did close off the highs, but buyers clearly came in at that 130 level. And I think that's a key area to watch now and a good place to trade against. So I think any weakness next week needs to be bought, because this one, this one has super monster written all over it. Like, this one could easily make 2026 for many different traders. And, any type of pullback early next week needs to be pounced on. Because again, you've got two big areas to trade against now. You've got the recent lows at 130, and then you've got the gap lows. I don't think it's going to really approach those gap lows again unless something really goes wrong in this market, but I think that 130 level looks great for a pullback, and we'll see what happens from here. There is some risk that they come out with a secondary offering and dilute, But you could also see the market gobble that up and maybe continue to move higher if the news flow continues to be good. So overall, top stock in the market right now, top one to look for pullbacks, and could be, SanDisk was the super monster earlier this year. I think mRNA could be the super monster for some of the rest of 2026. TEM, another one, really high potential here, has a huge short position against it, and had a monster move this week, huge volume, closed at the highs of the week. Very strong price action after the mRNA news. Daily chart, again, look at the super powerful volume, relentless for 3 days in a row. Shorts are probably scrambling here to cover. And, any pullback, I think, would be buyable on this stock early next week. It also might not be done going up for the near term and might need to make a little bit higher of a high before it finally has its first pullback. So, I would say anytime this stock is looking like it's going to start its first pullback, you want to buy into this one. But again, that first pullback might not be ready yet with how strong this one moved into the close on Friday. BNTX, another huge biotech breakout, big volume, clearing a lot of overhead resistance. Daily, this one, not taking quite as big a volume, but, kind of moved back into the gap on day 2, but moved back to the upside day 3. Clear place to trade this one against, even above the recent gap a little bit, maybe a little bit pullback next week. Play with a tight stop against former resistance levels. FRNM, recent IPO, big breakout of a base, again, helped along by this big biotech breakout. Daily chart, this one erupted higher all week on volume, but does have some near resistance to kind of trade against if it does pull back a little bit with a tight stop, and the short-term moving averages if they catch up right there. And looking for this one to follow through to the upside. AMLX, already kind of in a slow uptrend, but had an explosive move higher on huge volume as another big biotech breakout. On the daily, this one moved up starting on Tuesday and then continued higher during the week, started pulling back on Friday. So maybe it's ready for its first pullback. You can see the volume was a little bit heavier on the downside on Friday, so it might need maybe a little time to consolidate. That would be a good place to look for an entry in this one as the short-term moving averages catch up. And then finally, MRVI, another biotech breakout, continuation move on huge volume. Daily chart, this one also spurred on by that mRNA breakout, moving higher on Wednesday and then following through for the rest of the week. And again, any type of pullback early next week, there's logical recent support to trade against, along with potentially short-term moving averages. And then next, we'll look at a couple of cryptocurrency stocks. Again, the cryptocurrencies had a sector-wide breakout, big volume. However, I think the big problem there is that most of these major cryptocurrencies have overhead resistance, but the one that doesn't is Hyperliquid. Hyperliquid looks fantastic. Monster move higher on huge volume. You can see before the move this week, it really wasn't doing anything, but was declining on light volume into long-term moving averages, and then it explodes on huge volume this past week. On the daily, looks like Hyperliquid might be starting its first pullback, so really any type of pullback to former resistance levels would be a logical place to buy this one. And then looking for follow through higher. And again, the big upside here is no overhead resistance and monster volume versus, we'll look at MSTR next, but MSTR has tons of overhead resistance. And you can see in the way this one traded, it didn't trade nearly as powerful as Hyperliquid. So MSTR going back into tons of resistance, but did take huge volume. And again, before last week, we thought this one was going to break down, but instead it breaks out. So you have to bend to the market and recognize that we've got a big cryptocurrency breakout here now. So can it no longer be bear? We've been bearish cryptocurrency ever since July 2025 when it started to make a major top, and now is the time to be bullish cryptocurrency with a huge stage 2 breakout here against the 10-week moving average. But again, the problem is the overhead resistance. On the daily chart, you can see again, MSTR makes a big move on day 1, but starting to get back into resistance on day 2 and 3, which is why it's trading a lot weaker. But you can still look to buy a pullback in this one against all the moving averages and then look for follow through higher. It does have very nice volume for 3 consecutive days here as the cryptocurrency space broke out to the upside. So bottom line, as you can see in the stage 2 breakouts this week, it was heavily biotech and cryptocurrency. Biotech looks much better than cryptocurrency because biotech's got no overhead resistance and biotech's got the monster leader mRNA. Cryptocurrency also does look good though, and Hyperliquid again looks like a monster, and I think that one's got huge potential over the next few weeks potentially. So interesting, last week it looked like the only place to be was either in cash or short, but now we've got 2 big sector moves that erupted, and we'll see how these play out over the next few weeks.